Part 1. The Reign of James II. After years of civil war and unrest, people in England and Scotland wanted peace and stability. The English Civil War began in 1642, in opposition to King Charles I's growing authoritarianism, leading to his execution in 1649. England became a republic called the Commonwealth, while his son, Charles II, became king in Scotland and Ireland. Oliver Cromwell defeated Charles II by 1653 and brought all of Great Britain under Republican rule. The new government soon faced problems. Protestant groups such as Puritans, Baptists, and Quakers disagreed about religion and society. After disputes with Parliament, Cromwell ended the Commonwealth and created a military-backed protectorate. Many people disliked the strict Puritan rules that changed worship, marriage, and everyday life. After Cromwell died in 1658, the government became unstable, and Charles II returned as king in 1660. Charles II privately leaned toward Catholicism and supported greater religious tolerance, but Parliament opposed him. The Test Acts, first passed in 1673, stopped Catholics from holding public office. In 1678, Titus Oates falsely claimed that Catholics planned to kill the king. Many believed him, which led to arrests, executions, and attacks on Catholics. These fears led to the Exclusion crisis, where politicians tried to remove Charles's openly Catholic brother, James, the Duke of York, from the succession. Charles repeatedly dissolved Parliament to protect James's claim to the throne, splitting Parliament into factions: the Tories, who supported James, and the Whigs, who opposed him. In 1683, some Whigs planned to kill Charles and James, but authorities discovered the plot and punished those involved. On his deathbed, Charles converted to Catholicism before dying on February 6, 1685, at age 54. James then became King James II in England and James VII in Scotland. Many people, especially the Tories, accepted him, even though he had openly followed Catholicism since 1673. Others thought it seemed strange that a Catholic king led the Protestant Church of England. James promised to protect the law, private property, and Anglicanism in the country. In 1685, James faced the Monmouth Rebellion. Protestant dissenters and Whig supporters, many from poorer groups, backed James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth, the illegitimate son of Charles. Monmouth landed in southwest England in June and took control of Dorset and Somerset. However, he was defeated and killed at Sedgemoor on July 6th. A series of trials known as the Bloody Asses executed about 250 rebels and sent another 850 to work in the West Indies. At the same time, James faced a revolt in Scotland led by Archibald Campbell, the Earl of Argyll. Argyll returned from Amsterdam in May 1685 with 300 men. He hoped to build a large army, but his plan quickly failed. He appealed mostly to radical Presbyterians and angry Whigs, alienating modern Protestants. His force grew to about 2,500 men before confusion and desertion reduced its size. Government troops captured and executed Argyll on June 30th. Authorities cut off the ears of nearly 50 rebels and sent 177 others to work in New Jersey as punishment. After crushing Monmouth and Argyll, James gained stronger control over England. Parliament gave him taxes for life, which allowed him to expand the army to nearly 20,000 soldiers. This caused concern even among some supporters, who questioned whether a king could keep such a large army in peacetime without Parliament's approval. Soldiers often stole supplies, mistreated people, and fought with locals. Fear grew that the army stood above the law, especially when James gave military jobs to Catholics despite the Test Acts. In 1686, the court case Culloden v. Hales ruled that James could ignore the Test Acts and allow Catholics to hold office. Court events also increased fears of a Catholic takeover. King Louis XIV effectively banned Protestantism in France by revoking the Edict of Nantes with the Edict of Fontainebleau. Around 200,000 Protestants fled to countries such as Brandenburg, the Dutch Republic, and England. Many English Protestants feared that James supported Louis XIV because he often backed French interests and punished anti-French publications. Although James did help some Huguenot refugees, many distrusted him. In April 1687, James issued the Declaration of Indulgence. This reduced penalties on Catholics and Protestant dissenters and opened up jobs in universities and the army to them. He also protected Catholic worship and Catholics who had supported the monarchy during the Civil War. The declaration was a breaking point for many Tories, who now began to believe that James had truly broken the law and abused his power. James wanted more Catholic priests and wanted more people in England to become Catholic. He used the Ecclesiastical Commission to control church affairs and influence schools and universities. In January 1687, he tried and failed to force Charterhouse School to give a scholarship to a Catholic student. He then allowed Catholic converts at Oxford to keep jobs without following normal religious rules, and placed Catholics and supporters into key university roles. At Cambridge, he ordered the university to give degrees to 2 Catholics without the usual Protestant oaths. When they refused, their vice-chancellor was removed. James also tried to do the same thing to Magdalen College at Oxford, but the fellows rejected his candidate for poor character and rule-breaking. James removed them and replaced them with Catholics. Before long, he expanded his purges to the entire country. Countless officials who failed to fully and enthusiastically support Catholic policies were replaced. In the autumn of 1687, James announced that Queen Mary was pregnant. Some people celebrated, but many did not. If the child was a son, then he'd be raised a Catholic, and James's efforts to turn Protestant England into a Catholic state would be solidified. In January 1688, James reissued the Declaration of Indulgence, ordering churches to read it to their congregations. Most clergy refused. Only about 200 of over 9,000 churches complied. Archbishop of Canterbury William Sancroft and 6 bishops are arrested for asking him to cancel it. At the trial in June, the bishops argued that they simply repeated what Parliament had already said. The king could not suspend laws by himself. After long arguments, the jury found the bishops not guilty. James was humiliated, his authority badly damaged. On June 10th, Queen Mary gave birth to James Francis Edward Stuart. On the day the 7 bishops were freed, 7 leading nobles and officials in the kingdom accepted that England would return to Catholicism under the Stuarts, unless something was done. Part 2. The Protestant Wind. In the spring of 1672, 50,000 French troops poured into the Dutch Republic. By late summer, most of the Republic lay under destructive enemy control or faced unrest and riots. The Republic quickly turned to the Prince of Orange, William, who was elected as Stadtholder and restored much order. William later lost a battle at Castle in 1677, but he also married Mary, the Protestant daughter of James, that same year. In 1678, the Peace of Nijmegen ended the war, and the Dutch gave up some land in Flanders. After this, William strengthened central power and removed rivals. Big trading cities like Amsterdam resisted him, who feared power concentrated in one man would hurt trade and stability. William also had close ties to England through his uncles Charles II and James II, and through his wife Mary. The Dutch did not really care about the destabilizing situation in England, and focused on the far more menacing French threat. Peace allowed trade to boom, but Louis XIV was quick to raise tariffs on Dutch goods and block imports in 1687, harming industries like textiles and fishing. William saw the deteriorating situation in England and began to make plans. If Queen Mary gave birth to a son, which she did in June 1688, then that would change the succession and push aside his wife Mary. Dutch leaders also started to fear a future alliance between Louis and James against the Dutch Republic. So, starting in April, William secretly started preparing for a possible invasion of England to install a friendly Protestant government. On July 10, 1688, 7 powerful English nobles secretly invited William to remove James and take the throne, ensuring him that much of the country would welcome him with open arms. While French troops began to besiege Philipsburg on the Rhine starting in September 1688, William revealed his strategy to Dutch officials. He said that staying defensive would repeat past failures like 1672. He wanted to act first by invading England while James was weak and unpopular. Dutch leaders agreed slowly, especially after Louis seized Dutch ships in French ports. William prepared a massive invasion force. He gathered about 15,000 Dutch soldiers and 5,000 volunteers from France, England, and Scotland. He also gathered 463 ships, much more than the Spanish Armada that tried to invade England a century earlier. James had about 40,000 soldiers, but they were spread across the British Isles. By October, William's army gathered near Rotterdam. They packed countless weapons, horses, guns, supplies, tools, portable bridges, and even a printing press. Everything was ready in a remarkably short time, but a dazzlingly Popish wind prevented the fleet from setting out. On November 1st, a strong eastern Protestant wind finally allowed the gargantuan armada to sail. The Dutch landed at Torbay in Devon on November 5th. The landing went well, welcomed by local people who proceeded to help unload supplies. Heavy rain and bad roads slowed the army after landing, however, forcing William to catch a breather in Exeter for a time. James, at first, ignored the danger. He figured that William would not attack so late in the year, if the Dutch were able to muster up such an invasion force in the first place. When the threat became clear in September, however, James quickly changed his tune. He brought back removed officials, promised support for the Church of England, restored local governments, and let Parliament discuss disputes. Church leaders saw him flailing and made more demands. William's army quickly took control of the West Country. The printing press the Dutch brought with them started disseminating declarations and propaganda to present William as a defender of Protestantism and English laws. Many nobles, politicians, officers and soldiers flocked to the Orange Banner. Skirmishes between Williamite and Royalist forces were rare, but those that did happen, like at Wincanton and Reading, did result in deaths. In London, crowds attacked Catholic churches after a priest spoke against the King James Bible. People destroyed buildings, chased soldiers, and burned religious items. When troops fired into a riot at a Catholic site, killing several, James closed most Catholic churches in London, but unrest continued. As William's army slowly moved forward, Queen Mary saw the writing on the wall, and in December escaped to France with her infant son, James Francis Edward. The next day, James himself tried to flee London to join his family, but he was caught and brought back to the capital. But James was intent on going to France, so William gave him his wish. William entered London to a warm welcome. With the British thrones now vacant, the Convention Parliament met in January 1689. The Whigs and Tories disagreed on what to do. Most Whigs said James had broken a contract between king and people, harmed Protestantism, and given up his right to rule. They wanted William to become king because they thought he could protect England and keep order. Most Tories wanted to continue the royal Stuart line, either by bringing back James with limits, or making his daughter Mary queen. After long debates, Parliament agreed that James had tried to damage the constitution, had abandoned the government, and had left the throne vacant. Parliament then offered the crown to William and Mary to rule as co-monarchs. William, now William III, held most executive power. The new Declaration of Rights banned many things James had done, such as suspending laws without permission, ignoring laws for certain people, aka dispensing powers, special church courts like the Ecclesiastical Commission, and keeping peacetime armies without Parliament's approval. It protected elections, free speech in Parliament, and fair rules on taxes, punishments, and bail. The Bill of Rights codified these ideas into law, also barring Catholics from inheriting the throne or marrying monarchs. The Toleration Act gave some partisan groups limited religious freedom, but many restrictions remained. The Glorious Revolution created a constitutional monarchy in England, where monarchs still had power, but now had to govern with Parliament. Many Scottish leaders held their own convention parliament in March 1689 to decide what to do after James fled to England. Scotland and England shared the same king under the Stuarts, but they remained separate countries. Scotland's parliament had less power than England's. The king, his advisors, and powerful nobles controlled much of the government. After the Restoration, the Church of Scotland, or the Kirk, became Episcopalian. Bishops led the church and supported the king, even after James fled. Whigs and Presbyterians reduced royal power and changed the Kirk from rule by bishops to a Presbyterian system, ruled by church elders. Much like England, the Scottish Parliament agreed that James had broken the law and left the throne. They then also offered the crown to William and Mary, and issued a similar claim of right to place limits on the co-monarch's power. Unlike England, however, many Scots continued to openly support James. The Duke of Gordon held Edinburgh Castle in revolt for a short time, but surrendered in June 1689. A bigger threat came from John Graham, Viscount Dundee, who led Highland supporters of James. James declared the new Scottish Parliament illegal and told his followers to join Dundee. Dundee won the Battle of Killiecrankie in July 1689, but died during the fighting. Government forces defeated the Jacobites at Dunkeld in August, and crushed the last uprising in Cromdale in May 1690. The Glorious Revolutions succeeded in Scotland, but it created disunity by removing Episcopalian church leaders and increasing Presbyterian control. Part 3. The Williamite War. Before William invaded England, Louis XIV's ambassador warned the Dutch that France would treat any successful landing as a declaration of war. Louis was not worried, however, because he thought William's invasion would fail. This let Louis focus on the Rhine, but by concentrating his efforts there, Louis also gave William freedom to act in England. France in the 1680s tried to expand to achieve stronger and more defensible borders. Earlier wars, such as the War of the Reunions, followed this goal. Other European powers saw Louis's actions as endless expansion. In response, William built the Grand Alliance, allying England, the Dutch Republic, and the Holy Roman Emperor against France. Louis also saw Austrian victories over the Ottoman Empire at Buda and Mohat, and expected Austria to target France next. After French forces captured Philipsburg in October 1688, they devastated much of the Rhine region. They burned towns, villages, and farmland, including Mannheim, Speyer, and Worms. Louis hoped this would slow enemy armies, but it had the opposite effect. More German states, including Brandenburg, Bavaria, and Saxony, joined the Grand Alliance, and war officially began in January 1689. Louis had expected a short war, but he now faced many enemies on many fronts. He raised new militia units and enlarged his army. In Flanders, fighting focused on sieges because many fortresses blocked movement, and neither side gained much ground. The hardest fighting came in the Rhineland. Louis faced more German troops than expected, and could not match their numbers. In July, 60,000 German soldiers besieged 8,000 French troops in Mainz. After months of trenches, bombardments, tunnels, and night attacks, the French surrendered in September. At the same time, Louis openly supported the exiled James in his efforts to retake his thrones. England and Scotland were about 98% Protestant, but in Ireland, only about 1/3 of the people were Protestant, mostly in Ulster. Many Catholics still remembered how Oliver Cromwell's army killed people at Drogheda in 1649 and took Irish Catholic land. In 1687, Richard Talbot, the Earl of Tyrconnell, became Lord Deputy, or Governor, of Ireland under James. After James fled England, Tyrconnell raised a Catholic army of almost 45,000 men. Because the soldiers received little pay, many stole food, animals, and goods from local people, especially Protestants. On March 12, 1689, James landed at Kinsale along the southern edge of the island. Crowds warmly welcomed their king as he travelled eastward to Dublin. In May, he called a parliament there that passed laws supporting his rule and rejecting England's decision to replace him. Meanwhile, the Protestant city of Derry resisted Jacobite forces. In July, French commander Conrad von Rosen forced many Protestant men, women, and children to gather outside the city walls without food or shelter. The defenders faced a hard choice: let them in and use up their scarce food, or leave them outside to freeze. English ships saved Derry later that month, but not before 12,000 people reportedly died outside the walls. The next month, William's mainly Danish and Dutch force captured Carrick Argyll and Belfirsta. In June 1690, William himself arrived with 35,000 troops. On the River Boyne, outside of Drogheda, he faced about 21,000 Jacobite and French soldiers. The battle began on July 1st, when James moved his army to block a river crossing. This weakened another part of his line, and allowed William's main army to cross elsewhere. Facing possible encirclement, many Jacobite troops retreated in confusion and abandoned weapons and equipment. James tucked his tail and fled to France, abandoning the Jacobite army. After William won the Battle of the Boyne, he got bad news from Europe. On June 30th, the French Navy beat the Anglo-Dutch fleet at Beachy Head. French forces then sacked Tynemouth and Devon before leaving. Many people feared that France might invade England, but William stayed focused on Ireland. He marched south, took Waterford in July, and secured all of Leinster. At the same time, William sent General James Douglas to capture Athlone and its bridge over the River Shannon. Douglas shelled the town, but could not break through its defenses. He left when reports spread that a large Jacobite army, led by Patrick Sarsfield, was approaching. Most of the Jacobite army was actually in Limerick, though many lacked weapons, shoes, and proper clothes. Limerick's defenses were weak, and Jacobite leaders disagreed about their next move. William reached Limerick on August 8th and began a siege. Sarsfield's raids disrupted his supplies, and a major assault on August 27th ended in a bloodbath. William ended the siege in shame and returned to England. From abroad, William ordered John Churchill, the Earl of Marlborough, to capture the vital ports of Cork and Kinsale. Like Limerick, Cork refused to surrender, but unlike Limerick, Marlborough was successful in his own assault of the walls, taking 5,000 prisoners in September. Kinsale proved to be just as resistant to the Williamite troops, but it could not resist a bombardment. In January 1691, Tyrconnell returned to Limerick with help from James and Louis, outfitted with French guns, pikes, officers, engineers, and the General Charles Chalmois de Saint-Roux. This led Patrick Sarsfield grow the Jacobite army to around 37,000 men, and strengthened the defences of Limerick and Athlone. However, on June 30th, Williamite forces under Godard de Ginkle captured the latter. After losing Athlone, many Jacobite leaders wanted to defend Limerick and Galway. Saint-Roux chose to fight near Aughrim with bogs, ditches, hedges, and hills instead. The battle on July 12th saw Sarsfield's cavalry nearly secure a victory. However, some Irish troops meant to guard a flank had moved elsewhere, allowing the cavalry to exploit the gap. As Saint-Roux moved forward to lead a counterattack, a cannonball decapitated him, and the Jacobite army collapsed and fled. After Aughrim, Ginkle attacked Galway first. Many people there wanted peace, so the city surrendered without issue. Ginkle then reached Limerick in late August. This gave Sarsfield time to rebuild the army to over 17,000 men, though only about 10,000 had weapons. Tyrconnell hoped Limerick could hold out until French help arrived, but he died on August 14th. A month later, Ginkle had completely surrounded Limerick. During one attack, a French commander panicked and raised the drawbridge too soon, trapping many Irish soldiers outside in the River Shannon. Many drowned, died, or were captured. Sarsfield saw that the war could not be won. On October 3rd, 1691, the Treaty of Limerick ended the war in Ireland. It promised rights for Irish Catholics and allowed about 12,000 Irish soldiers to leave for France in the Flight of the Wild Geese. After the Catholic Jacobite defeat in Ireland, Protestant rule grew stronger in the Protestant Ascendency. In 1641, Catholics owned about 59% of Irish land. By 1703, they owned only 14%, dropping further to 5% by 1778. Many Protestant landowners did not live in Ireland. These absentee landlords siphoned money out of the country and weakened local farming life. Many Irishmen lived in extreme poverty. New laws called Penal laws limited Catholic life on the island. Catholics could not vote or hold jobs in politics, the army, or law. The laws also made it harder for them to buy, keep, or pass on land, making it easier for Protestant landlords to take over. Catholics could not join mixed marriages, run Catholic schools, or own weapons. Even with these laws, most people in Ireland stayed Catholic. Catholic priests often worked in secret and held hidden services, while informal hedge schools taught both scripture and education. Even under English dominance, Scotland and Ireland both kept strong local identities. In Scotland, Gaelic and Scots languages slowly declined, especially among elites who adopted English culture. In Ireland, people still kept many traditions and a strong sense of identity despite pressure. Part 4. The Jacobite Pretenders. With William's rule secured in Britain, William wanted a united government. Many Tories accepted him as king in practice, but not as the rightful ruler. Some stricter Anglican Tories rejected him completely. Whigs used this to paint the Tories as untrustworthy and praised William as a Protestant deliverer who saved England from Catholic rule. William needed money to fight France after the Glorious Revolution. Many Tories openly opposed costly wars in Europe and the high land taxes needed to pay for them. After Queen Mary died in 1694, William lost an important ally, allowing a leading Whig group, the Whig Junto, to gain control. The Junto raised taxes on land, windows, births, and burials. They also created the Bank of England in 1694 to raise loans, manage government debt, and issue paper money. In 1697, they passed the Civil List Act, which gave William £700 sterling a year, and allowed him to spend more of it without Parliament's oversight. In 1696, Jacobites planned a rebellion with French support, and aimed to kidnap and kill William. Authorities uncovered the plot, and some conspirators faced execution or imprisonment. Parliament then passed the Trials for Treason Act, which gave accused people stronger legal protections, such as knowledge of charges and access to counsel. William faced criticism in England, but many people in the Dutch Republic admired him. They saw William as a defender of liberty against Louis. Most Dutch people supported the war, but it hurt the economy. Trade slowed, cities shrank, wages fell, rents rose, jobs disappeared, and unrest grew. The Treaty of Ryswick in 1697 forced France to recognize William as king and promised better trade terms, though France did not always keep those promises. William worried about who would rule Spain as the death of the weak and sickly King Charles II was imminent. In 1698 and 1700, William had helped make plans with France to divide Spain's lands between different heirs. Charles II rejected those plans and left his whole empire to Philip V, the grandson of Louis XIV, when he died in November 1700. William also worried about who would rule England next, because Anne, his sister-in-law and closest heir in the kingdom, had no children. Some people wanted James Francis Edward, the son of James II, to become king if he joined the Church of England. In 1701, Parliament passed the Act of Settlement. It named Sophia of Hanover and her heirs as future rulers if Anne died without children. The law also confirmed that Catholics could not take the throne or marry the monarch. Meanwhile, tensions with France grew over the Spanish succession. Louis took over Dutch forts in the Spanish Netherlands, and later recognized James Francis Edward as the rightful Stuart heir after James II died on November 16, 1701. England and the Dutch then went to war with France again. William died on March 19, 1702, at age 51, after a fall from his horse. Queen Anne led Britain during the War of the Spanish Succession, and during the Union of England and Scotland in 1707. The Duke of Marlborough won major victories, including Blenheim in 1704. High costs, claims of corruption, and political divisions helped the Tories win the 1710 election. The Treaty of Utrecht ended the war in 1713, and once again forced Louis to stop supporting the Jacobites. The Tories then split over who should succeed Anne. Some continued to support James Edward Stuart, while others supported the Hanoverians. Anne and Sophia both died in 1714, so the Act of Settlement took effect. Sophia's son, George I, the Elector of Hanover, became King of Great Britain. After George I became king, the Tories lost power. The Whigs removed Tories from government jobs and put important Tory leaders on trial. Many Tories felt shut out, like John Erskine, the Earl of Mar. He had supported the union of Scotland and England and had served Queen Anne. He promised loyalty to George I, but he pleased claims that Mar secretly backed the Jacobites and ignored him in public. Mar felt insulted and turned toward rebellion. Mar secretly returned to Scotland and met supporters. He gathered Highland and Lowland nobles and landowners, using a large deer hunt to hide these meetings. Many Highland clans valued loyalty and strong leadership, and saw the Stuart dynasty as an embodiment of those ideas. Government Commander John Campbell, the Duke of Argyll, warned that most Scots north of the River Forth favoured the rebels. On September 6, 1715, Mar raised the Jacobite flag before James Edward Stuart even knew the uprising had begun. The rebels quickly captured Perth and outnumbered Argyll's army. In November, the two armies met at Sheriffmuir near Stirling. Both managed to defeat each other's left flank. Confusion set in, and neither won a clear victory. At the same time, 1,000 Jacobites in northern England rose up and marched to Preston. Government attacks on the town failed at first, but the rebels neither fought back nor escaped. Government forces then surrounded and subdued them. The unclear result at Sheriffmuir and the defeat at Preston broke the revolt. James arrived in Scotland in December anyways. When Argyll moved on to Perth, James and Mar fled to France on February 4th, and the remaining rebel army soon collapsed. Spain lost many of its lands in Europe with the Treaty of Utrecht. Austria gained territories in Italy and the Spanish Netherlands. Savoy got Sicily, while Britain gained Minorca and Gibraltar. King Philip V wanted to reverse these losses, but he could not find any allies. Only the Jacobites seemed like the best option, because restoring the Stuarts to the British throne could give Spain a powerful ally. Spain's chief minister, Cardinal Alberoni, improved trade with Britain while secretly supporting James Francis Edward. In 1717, Philip V ordered the capture of Sardinia. Britain and France offered land in Italy to Philip's son Charles, but Philip refused. In 1718, Spain invaded Sicily. Britain, France, Austria, and Savoy then formed the Quadruple Alliance against Spain. Soon after, a British fleet destroyed much of the Spanish navy at the Battle of Cape Passaro, trapping the Spanish army in Sicily. To recover, Alberoni invited James Edward Stuart to Spain and planned an invasion of Britain. The plan called for a major landing in southwest England under the Duke of Ormond, and a smaller one in the Scottish Highlands. Delays hurt the effort, and storms badly damaged the fleet in early 1719. Still, 307 Spanish soldiers reached Scotland. There, they learned the main invasion had failed, but Jacobite leaders chose to continue. At Culloden, both sides had just over 1,000 men. On June 10th, British troops quickly broke the Jacobite position. The Scots escaped into the Highlands, but the Spanish soldiers, unsure of where to go, surrendered. Spain's war effort continued to fail, and Philip accepted peace terms at The Hague in February 1720. After the failed Jacobite Rising of 1719, support for the Jacobite cause fell off a cliff, both in Britain and elsewhere. Jacobitism gained a reputation for failure, poor leadership, failed plots, and failed invasions. Even so, Francis Atterbury, the Bishop of Rochester, tried to use public anger against the Whig government to seize London for the Stuarts. Government agents stopped the plan, but Parliament could not provide enough evidence against Atterbury, so it exiled him in 1723. Another failed plot. In 1740, the War of the Austrian Succession began, and once again drew Britain and France into conflict. France started to back Charles Edward Stuart, the son of James Francis Edward, hoping a Stuart king would weaken Britain. King Louis XV gathered 10,000 troops for an invasion in 1744, but a storm scattered the fleets and ended the plan. Charles Edward grew up believing he had a divine right to the British throne. In August 1745, he landed in Scotland with about 1,300 of his own men and declared his goal of restoring his father. Many people hesitated to join because they remembered the previous failed uprisings, while British politicians underestimated the disturbance. Charles marched through Scotland with little resistance and entered Edinburgh on September 27th without a fight. On October 2nd, Jacobite and government forces fought near Edinburgh at Prestonpans. The Jacobites used the famous Highland Charge, causing government troops to panic, fire a single volley, and flee. In just 10 minutes, the Jacobites captured about 1,400 soldiers. London reacted with alarm, and even asked the Dutch to help curb what was now obviously a rebellion. Despite victory, open Jacobite support stayed limited. Many joined because they were poor, pressured by family, or seeking protection. Jacobites forced recruitment by threatening landlords with violence or property loss, and pressured people for funds. The Presbyterian Church in the cities opposed the rebellion and shaped opinion against it in the lowlands. Jacobite forces numbered around 5,500 as they moved into England. In November, Charles Edward captured Carlisle, hoping English support would rise. Only in Manchester did some people welcome him. By mid-December, they reached Derby, only about a week's march from London. Panic spread in the capital. France sent limited help, such as money, officers, and weapons. In October 1745, Louis XV signed a treaty with Charles Edward's supporters, rejecting George II and recognizing James Francis Edward. But George II had raised 30,000 troops in the meantime, and French help did not arrive. Charles Edward agreed with his commanders to pull back to Scotland. On January 28, 1746, Jacobites won a sharp clash at Falkirk, killing about 400. The victory changed little, as Britain still held strong resources and control of the sea. As Prince William, the Duke of Cumberland, led new forces, the Jacobites retreated to Inverness in March. The French had still yet to arrive. On April 27th, Cumberland struck at Culloden. Government artillery and better positioning battered Jacobites trapped in mud. Some charged and were cut down. Others fled and were killed by cavalry. Britain lost about 300 men, the Jacobites about 1,500. Much like his father and his father before him, Charles Edward fled the British Isles in shame. After the Battle of Culloden, Cumberland acted fast to crush resistance in the Highlands. His officials used very harsh punishments against people they believed supported rebellion. His forces destroyed homes, farms, and food supplies linked to suspected rebels. Even people who surrendered sometimes lost protection and still faced arrest or punishment. In total, 3,471 people, including men, women, and children, became prisoners. They did not have trials in Scotland, and many stayed on crowded ships where disease spread easily. Officials picked every 20th prisoner for trial through a lottery system, causing scores of prisoners to die in prison or after long legal battles. Unless they could prove strong and repeated resistance to Jacobitism, the accused were treated as guilty. Punishment often meant forced deportation to North America or the Caribbean, where prisoners worked as unpaid labor for life. Courts also issued many death sentences, but officials often changed them into deportation. Still, 120 Jacobites faced execution. After this, the government reduced the judicial power of Scottish clan leaders and landowners, centralizing the legal system in the region. The government also tried to disarm the Highlands and banned traditional Highland clothing, but these rules were hard to enforce, so they had limited success. The Glorious Revolution began as a response to James II's increasing authoritarianism, causing Parliament to invite a foreign ruler to invade England and replace James. Under William III, Britain became a constitutional monarchy, which limited the monarch's power. However, continued after 1689. Whigs and Tories stayed divided, especially over religion and royal authority. George I and George II depended mainly on Whig politicians and kept Tories out of most offices. The Septennial Act reduced how often elections happened, which helped the Whigs keep control. Wealth, influence, and large land ownership shaped Parliament more strongly. At the same time, war and government borrowing helped Britain build a strong financial system and expand into a large global empire. The Glorious Revolution also affected the Dutch Republic. Instead of raising taxes to burden the people, the government borrowed heavily to pay for its wars. Debt rose from about 38 million guilders after the 1670s to around 128 million by 1713. The provinces stayed divided and focused on their own interests, which weakened unity. Dutch control of global trade declined as British merchants took over. As a result, cities and industries weakened. Leiden lost most of its cloth trade. Haarlem's textile and linen industries collapsed. Salt production, shipbuilding, and rope and sail making also dropped as trade ships became fewer. Cities shrank as skilled workers moved to countries like Britain, Prussia, and Sweden. Living costs in cities sometimes dropped, but wages did not always improve because fewer jobs existed. Some employers lowered wages by hiring immigrants and children, which led to strikes and conflict. The Glorious Revolution may have propelled Great Britain to new heights, but it helped put the Dutch, once one of the most wealthiest countries in Europe, on a road of slow decline to a secondary power in wider European politics.